Chuck Todd is the second dumbest human being in media. Nobody's trying to politicize this, Mr. Pence. Pence goes to give him examples and he shuts him up. All right, so here is Chuck Todd, who you regular listeners to the show know is the second dumbest guy in media. He's always working to be number one. But Brian Stelter from CNN is, of course, the gold medal winner of Dopey in the Dopey Media Olympics.
Amen.
He's hard to take out. He's like an Olympic-level sprinter. He's like Carl Lewis at his prime. It's very hard to beat Brian Stelter. But Chuck Todd always gives it the good old college try. So the second dumbest guy in media has Vice President Mike Pence on, who is leading the coronavirus task force this weekend on his awful show on Meet the Depressed. And he's on there. And this is Chuck Todd, who asks a question of Mike Pence, saying, hey, who in the media is trying to politicize this? We're not trying to politicize this. And then as Mike Pence goes to answer the question, dopey silver medal in the stupid Olympics, Chuck Todd cuts him off, of course, because he is the second dumbest guy in media. Listen to this dope, Chuck Todd, who is, by the way, one of the people contributing heftily to the politicization of this coronavirus, trying to stop Mike Pence from explaining why that, in fact, is very dangerous. Check this out.
You've gone out of your way since you've been appointed to this to try to keep this from getting politicized. You have made every effort, every statement. But I want to play for you what some of your allies have said about the coronavirus. Here's including the president's son and the RNC chair. Take a listen, sir.
The coronavirus being weaponized as yet another element to bring down Donald Trump.
Democrats are using this for their political gain to try and stoke fear in the American people, which is shameful, wrong, and I think un-American.
For them to try to take a pandemic and seemingly hope that it comes here and kills millions of people so that they could end Donald Trump's streak of winning is a new level of sickness.
None of this seems to match the facts. What facts are there that Democrats are doing this?
Well,
it seems like people are asking questions and they're concerned about the virus. This implies some sort of political motivation, which is kind of gross.
Well, I will tell you, there's been a lot of irresponsible rhetoric among Democrats and commentators.
Who is this?
On the left.
Name some names, sir.
Well,
because this is it just feels like gaslighting. Please name some names. We're all big.
Well,
we're all big people here. Name some names.
There was a column in the New York Times that by a prominent liberal journalist that said we should rename it the Trump virus.
Okay, does that apply to all people?
So that the president would be blamed. Chuck, this virus began in China.
Why take this? Here's what I ask you. This doesn't help.
This
does not
decisive
help us, no?
action to protect the American people.
Now, we may have to adjust our foolish morons in media chart, because I'm telling you, Chuck is making a valiant effort to be number one. To be number two is impressive. But notice what Chuck does there. Number one, he stumbles over his own words. I've never seen a guy more inappropriate to a major audience show on a network than Chuck Todd. He's clearly a life loser, a guy who's done nothing in his life of any significant accomplishment whatsoever, who sees himself as a liberal scion who's there to do nothing more than attack Republicans. He doesn't see himself as a serious journalist because nobody else sees Chuck that way. So he asked a question. He goes, we're all big people here. No, you're not. Believe me, you're a very small man, probably in more ways than one, Chuck. So he asks for evidence that the media and Democrats are politicizing this. So hat tip, Steve Guest, who I saw, he had this on his Twitter feed. I tweeted it out as a thread. Let's produce the evidence for Chuck to show you why the media's doing this. And I want to be careful. I want to tell you why I'm doing this. This is important because you may be asking right now a very valid question. Dan, why are we relitigating these attacks? Folks, I promise you, I'm going to show you a Washington Examiner headline that is going to show you exactly why I'm publicizing what they're doing. You don't think this is real? That Trump is taking a hit on this? You think I'm making this up? I'll get to that. Let's go through because Chuck wants us to name names and he's dopey. So we'll put visuals if you want to watch along at home, youtube.com/Bongino. Let's go to Exhibit A. BSico, otherwise known as Politico, you can fill in what the BS means. So BSico, again known as Politico sometimes, put out a piece saying that President Trump on Friday night tried to cast the global outbreak of corona as a conspiracy intended to undermine his first term, lumping it alongside impeachment and the Mueller investigation. Now, I took a screenshot, which you can see, again, youtube.com/Bongino. They tried to put it up on far left-leaning Facebook, which is probably to the left of Politico, and it was deemed false. False. Even far-left Facebook deemed Politico's post that President Trump tried to cast this thing as a hoax and a conspiracy, Corona, as false. That is not true. Again, Chuck, you're looking for examples? Example one, Politico, Trump said that coronavirus is a conspiracy. That's not what he said. I'm not going to play the whole speech because I'm short on time today and we have a loaded show. President Trump was clearly saying that the media's hype of Corona and its subsequent coverage of what the Trump team was doing was a hoax, which it was. Politico busted by lefter-leaning Facebook. There's example one, silver medal winning Chuck Todd in the dopey media Olympics. Let's go to exhibit two because this stuff is having an effect. Don't gaff this off. Big mistake. Showed you this one last week. New York Slimes, sole purpose to be liberal activists and take down Trump. Let's call it the Trump virus, an opinion piece. That's the title of the piece. If you're feeling awful, you know who to blame. There's example two, Gail Collins, opinion columnist at the New York Times. Chuck, you may have missed that one too because you cut off Vice President Pence when he was trying to explain to you who the people were because we're all big people. No, you're not big. Trust me, you're not big. You are as small a human being as we could possibly imagine. You may say, oh, those are a couple examples here and there. Let's go to New York Times number two. Another New York Times article. Keep in mind, according to Chuck Todd, nobody's hyping this thing up. Nobody's trying to take down Trump. Headline, opinion column by the hapless Maureen Dowd, one of the worst opinion columnists in the history of opinion commentary at all. Maureen Dowd, quote, Trump makes us ill. That's an actual headline in the New York Times. New York Times believes they're the tip of the spear of responsibility, right? You think this is an appropriate headline during a potential pandemic of a virus that has killed some people? You think that's appropriate? If I wrote that and suggested that at foxnews.com, they would tell me, what are you, crazy? Yep. I'm sure of it. You may say, come on, Dan. So you got three examples. Chuck said Chuck clearly meant less than three. Three or more, you got three. It's not that big of a deal, right? Well, let's go to the Washington Post. You may say, well, clearly they weren't playing this game too. Oh, no, they were in on it too. Because remember, folks, democracy dies in the darkness, right? The hilarious Washington Post motto, because they are the darkness, the Washington Post. Here's a Jillian Brackell at the Washington Post. Trump is ignoring the lessons of the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic that killed millions, historian says. He is. That's interesting you said that because they've only brought up prior pandemics, the Trump administration, their response, multiple times in their speeches. So if they're ignoring it, Joe, if you're ignoring something, do you talk about it in public press briefings that happen repeatedly? I'm not sure that's a good idea if you're trying to ignore it.
That would not be ignoring it, Dan. That would not be ignoring it. No.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Dan.
Let's go to the video, because now you may be saying, if you're a liberal, which means you're chronically confused, and I get that because you're lied to and you accept the lies, or you're a liar yourself and you propagate lies, you may be saying, well, okay, so the media is clearly biased and trying to hurt Trump, but you haven't shown any examples of actual Democrats, serious Democrats lying about this stuff, have you? Okay. Again, hat tip Steve Guest in his Twitter feed. Here's a brief video of Joe Biden, again, on a national show. Joe Biden, who is one of the leading contenders to be the president of the United States. No question about that. Here is Joe Biden making up an outright grotesque hoax falsehood that one of the task force members, Dr. Anthony Fauci, that Trump and the administration are using to combat this viral outbreak, that he was muzzled by the Trump administration. So let's listen in this clip to Biden lie to you because he's a liar, a disgraceful, discredited hoaxer liar involved in one of the biggest political scandals in American history with his son in Ukraine. Here's this disgraceful human being lying about it, and then you'll see right after that the actual Dr. Anthony Fauci, who Biden claims has been muzzled, completely refute Biden's complete, total lie. Chuck Todd, this is for you. You may want to watch this one, you moron. Check this out.
The scientist and muzzling the scientist. Look, Fauci's been here anyway, all the way back to the Bush administration.
Very dishonest question, but that's okay.
Dishonest. I want to clarify, Mr. President. I want to clarify.
So let me clarify it. I have never been muzzled, ever, and I've been doing this since the administration of Ronald Reagan. I'm not being muzzled by this administration. What happened which was misinterpreted, is that we were set up to go on some shows. And when the vice president took over, we said, let's regroup and figure out how we're going to be communicating. So I had to just stand down on a couple of shows and resubmit for clearance. And when I resubmitted for clearance, I got cleared. So I have not been muzzled at all. That was a real misrepresentation of what happened.
Again, I can't say this enough. I know it becomes redundant at the risk of being annoying, but it's important. Chuck Todd is the second dumbest human being in media. Nobody's trying to politicize this, Mr. Pence. Pence goes to give him examples and he shuts him off. I'd like to name names. I just named one, Joe Biden. Jillian, whatever her face is. Maureen Dowd, the New York Times editorial board. The opinion journalist at the New York Times. The Washington Post. We just named them, Chuck. Again, I know you're that stupid, but maybe open your eyes for a moment in a serious situation and for once in your life act like an actual journalist, not an outright gaslighting liberal propagandist.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud and follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.